going to church the weeks after the divorce happened, it was a painful place to be. I remember a moment where it was like, God has abandoned me. How could he let this happen? I did everything right. So there must not be a God. And that moment lasted about that long. And I was like, nope, like I'm not going there. If you're angry all the time, it's not your spouse's fault. It's not the economy's fault. It's not your boss's fault. It's because you're angry. You're choosing to feel angry. When's the last time anyone's life changed because they effectively blamed someone else?
Daren Smith. When I first heard of you, you were going by Sound Smith. Do you remember this? Like 2013 or 14?
That was another life, man. That was probably actually before that, because Soundsmith really ended around 2012 when I full on partnered with Alan C. Wright and we started Telekinesis Entertainment in 2009. So it was really like probably 2010, 2011. That
it probably was. Yeah.
We've known each other a long time.
Well, but I was in a different industry. I was doing like security.
Yeah.
And then I lost that job in 2012. And that's where I was like, that's where my wife was like, okay, you're going to do music. Let's fulfill what you were born to do.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you for believing in me, because it's really hard to believe in yourself sometimes. But yeah, I found you quickly because you were in the community. You were working at June kind of, and you were doing sound and all this different type of stuff, and started your own production company. And then I got my first studio outside of my house, which was down the hall from you.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of discussions about being entrepreneurs and hustling and what it's like to be young fathers trying to figure it out together. So we kind of have almost parallel journeys. You're more in the film and I'm more in the music.
Yeah, and we're both married to women whose names start with A.
That's true.
So
we're basically brothers. Well, that's awesome, man.
We go way back, and that was such an interesting time. Like, I went through a divorce in 2007, got married in 2009. That was pre,
I didn't know
pre all these things, but like I associate all of those moments with that time of my life. Even though I was working not for June Audio, but I was working for Dan Carlisle, and it was Solarium.
And these are local studios here.
Local studios. But Dan Carlisle was one of the first guys that hired me out of college. And when he built the studio in what became June Audio in the Riverwoods, I was the guy running that version of Solarium Studios.
Crazy.
And Scott Wiley was in the B room. So I recorded orchestra for Mindy Gledhill's first album. I was in and helped record the first Lower Lights albums.
Cool.
That, but all of that time I kind of associate with like a hard time in my life where I was going through a divorce and trying to work as much as possible because I was really struggling. And I got married in 2009. And around that time is when I shifted to post-production sound, really leaning into the production company that Alan and I ultimately started. And that feels like two different lives or two different phases of my adult life.
Yeah, it is interesting where those like huge landmarks, either good or bad, can put like a bookmark or like a stop in your life. Yeah, I definitely have those. 2000, like COVID obviously was everyone, but I mean that's like the one that I can say my old life died and my new life began post that. Well, cool. I know you have some interesting perspectives because of what you've been through. You came to my event, well, not the Men Who Love God event, the first one. I was really grateful you were there.
Yeah.
There's almost 30 men there, and they were all talking about like things they were struggling with, and we were commiserating and we were giving ideas. One thing you said when you came and said, "Hey, I'm actually doing pretty good. I'm here to like help out if someone needs something," because you've been through things, so you get it. How did you feel about the event? Like, how did you feel about being with other dudes and being vulnerable like that?
Oh man, I love that you did that. I love this podcast. It's so needed and so essential right now. But the fact that you just went with it, like you'd never done an event like that. You had more people show up, if I remember right. You had more people show up than you were expecting.
Yeah.
Because you're a humble dude. And and the amount, like the weight in that room was so palpable. And I was so grateful. Kevin Arnig, our mutual friend, who I've also known for over a decade, like invited me. We went to lunch that day and he's like, "You should come to this thing." I was like, "Yeah, great." I had no clue what it was. I showed up and was like, "Oh, it's Eric and his podcast." so I was sitting there without a lot of context for the event, and I was the last, I think, person to go because I was sitting next to you.
You were.
So all these guys go around a circle and they talk about what's going on in their lives and where are they at with their faith. And my heart was breaking for a lot of these guys because they were in the middle of things that I had already gone through. One guy had gone through losing his wife, his going through a divorce, and there were other people that were struggling with business. And I'm like, yep, check. I've been through all of those. And so I just had this massive amount of I want to help every single guy in this room. So as we were chatting individually afterwards, everyone I talked to was like, are you okay? What do you need help with? Can I help you with anything? Do you want to go get lunch? Do you want to go play Top Golf? What do you want to do? Because you need friends right now. That's what I remember needing the most. And, Heavenly Father knew that. Let's put it that way. He knew that the thing I needed when I was going through a divorce, when I was struggling in businesses, that I needed people.
Yeah. With your first divorce, I don't need the nitty gritty, but how did you reach out? Did people reach out to you? What was your experience to make you so empathetic to these men today?
Well, and to clarify, I've only had one divorce. So
what did I say?
My first divorce.
Your first. I didn't mean.
I've only had one.
How about your first marriage is what I meant.
Yeah. With the demise of my first marriage.
Yeah.
So let me roll out the full story there, but
okay, cool.
I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
I was married for a year, 13 months to the day. I tell people I played house for a year and then it ended, but it was really hard because I grew up really righteous, very obedient. I loved the gospel and I wanted to do everything right. And so when my marriage ended, it wasn't just a divorce. It was the breaking of a covenant with God. And it had all of this extra weight attached to it. And it was hard for me to go to church because I felt like the best times in our marriage was when we were at church because we weren't fighting, because she wasn't upset, because. Mm-hmm. And so going to church the weeks after the divorce happened was so hard. It was a painful place to be.
And you kept going?
I went for maybe 2 weeks and then opted out. I was like, I don't need more pain in my life. I need less pain. I want the pain to go away. So I was, taking care of the pain by not going to church, buying a double stuffed Pizza Hut pizza once a week. And that was my dinner every night, and renting Blu-ray discs from Blockbuster back when they were mailing them, so that was my life for 6 or 8 months. And I didn't lose my faith in God, but I basically just told him, I'm going to check out for a little bit because it's too hard. I'm not up to that task. So I had these amazing gentlemen in our church where they would come and knock on the door once or twice a month. And I kind of took the stance of they're just doing this out of obligation. Someone in church told them go check on Brother Smith or Daren Smith. And I was like, I don't need this. So I would just ignore the door knocks and slam another slice of pizza.
So you wouldn't even talk to him?
I wouldn't even talk to him.
But what did it mean? Anything that they were showing up? Kind of? Or?
It must have.
Okay.
Because about 3-4 months in, maybe even longer, because I remember I was inactive for about 8 months, meaning I was not attending church. I wasn't doing the daily practice of praying and reading scriptures and trying to live a Christian life. I wasn't doing bad things. I didn't get into drugs and alcohol and that stuff, but I didn't have a spiritual practice for about 8 months. And I remember the thing that snapped me out of it was finally these men had apparently been persistent enough, and God kept telling them, please go knock on the door one more time. So the time that I answered the door, I saw these 2 men and just nearly broke down because I knew that they had been checking in on me for months. And I told them that. The first thing I said is I know you've been coming and thank you. Come on in, let's chat. I'll tell you everything. I need people because I shut everyone out of my life. My best friends, my family, my siblings. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was home alone, watching movies, eating pizza. Terrible way to live. And it was that interaction when they came through the door, it felt like God coming through the door, not because they were Christ-like, but because they were doing God's work in that moment. They came in and this rush of a physical hug from God came rushing through the door. And from that moment on, I've never questioned. I've never missed church. I've never gone and like let the hard times that I've had in my life pull me away or distract me from that spiritual relationship with my Heavenly Father.
Dude, that's awesome. God bless those men.
Yeah.
So how did you rebuild your life after that?
Yeah, slowly. And with a lot of work. Like it was a lot of, I need to find more healthy ways to spend my time. So it was doubling down on work. I think I did 6 movies, post-production sound for 6 movies by myself, which is insane. You know what post looks like. I wasn't composing music, but dialogue editing, sound design, mixing, everything, ADR, all of it from my apartment.
Oh my gosh.
And I did like 6 indie movies that way. I remember we did one, I think it was called Highway 66, but they were trying to submit to Sundance. And I remember working 48 hours straight with, I think I took 1 lunch break, no sleep, to get this mix done so they could submit it to Sundance. And I was grateful for it.
Was it a good mix?
I doubt it. There's
48
no
hours
possible
straight.
way. There's no
I
possible
can't imagine.
way.
That sounds
yeah, I mean, a week's worth of work in two days.
That sounds so
it's
brutal.
insane.
Yeah.
But we did it.
Yeah.
And I was actually grateful for it. I was like, man, I'm so glad, because otherwise I'd be home watching movies, eating pizza, feeling bad about myself. So it was a distraction, a welcome distraction to be able to do that. And honestly, I got 5 years of experience in about 2 years because that's all I did. I just worked and worked and worked and worked. And it was about 2 years to the month that I married my wife, April. So I got divorced in August of 2007 and married in August of 2009.
Wow.
And, you know, my wife, April, we had been friends for 6-7 years. She was one of 2 people that was at the ceiling of my first wife. Like that's how close we were friend wise. And it was one of those days of like, we were on a double date where we set other people up and they hated each other. So we were at Sundance. I'll tell this quick story. Yeah. We were at Sundance, the movie Under the Stars or whatever, the Summer Under the Stars. Yeah. And it was like my friend, me, and then April, and then her friend sitting that way. So they were as far away from each other as they could get. And it was one of those like, we're under the stars, it's a beautiful night. I lean over and kiss April. Where did that come from? I have no idea. Your face is like what I'm saying. And
was she shocked too?
I think so. But like I had my arm around her.
Yeah.
And because in a friendly way, like we'd gone on quote unquote dates before, but they were always like Dutch. They were always like, I'm going to this concert. I know you love them. Do you want me to grab you a ticket? Yeah. And I'll pay you back. That kind of stuff. But it was just one of those like, we should be dating. Let's kick this off, I guess. And then this part of the story is always funny and she'll kind of hate me for saying it. But so April and I, we served an LDS mission together, not together, but we served in the same mission in Washington, D.C.
D.C., okay.
And I was her zone leader for the last few months, but like never a thought of dating or romantic anything because we're missionaries. But that's how we'd been friends and known each other for so long. And so we go out the next night, we're kissing a little bit. And she jokingly says, "Oh, Elder Smith." Oh my God. It just ruins it for me.
The worst.
So it's like, that was probably like September, I think, or October of 2008. And it wasn't until like February 2009 that I was like, okay, I actually do want to date April. But it took like a solid 5-6 months to recover from that traumatic experience. But yeah, we've been married now for 14 years.
And how many kids do you have?
We have 3 boys.
Yeah.
They're 9, 10, and 12. They're amazing. They love life. We love them. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm actually, just to tie a knot on the divorce thing, I'm grateful I went through that experience. My faith is so much stronger because I went through it. My marriage is perfect. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm so pleased and happy with my marriage. And I owe a lot to my ex for teaching me what I didn't want and what I wasn't going to let into a relationship again. And as much as it was hard, I'm grateful to her for that.
So, okay. So I love that the story's moved on and you're in the happy ending portion.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, one of my favorite things about Christ is how he can make beauty from ashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you were in the lowest of lows. That's how I felt when I've been broken multiple times in my life. The challenge is like to have faith that it will be better, because you probably, when you're sulking in your apartment, I imagine, I don't want to put thoughts and like say what you're feeling, but did you feel like this is it? Like it's not going to get better? Were you hopeless? I mean,
oh yeah,
because that's how we feel, is when we're being broken. But there's just so much hope there, right? There's always so much hope in that.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful thing that Christ can do for us.
Because I didn't lose my faith in God and Christ, like I could have gone, I remember a moment where it was like, God has abandoned me. How could he let this happen? I did everything right. Mm-hmm. So there must not be a God. And that moment lasted about that long. And I was like, nope, like I'm not going there. Yeah. Because like I served a 2-year mission. I had, been a faithful member of a church and believer in a gospel for my entire life. Like, okay, nope. Push that aside. Never let that.
Well, like that goes to your integrity of like what you know. But,
yeah, I think so.
I mean, it is. I mean, I respect that you did that because you have integrity.
I would almost say congruence rather than integrity, which I think is interesting to think about the two, because in that moment, I don't think it was integrity. I think it was, this is how I've always believed. And I have all these experiences that show me there is a God. He loves his children. He lets bad things happen to them because he knows there's better things on the other side. So I think it was more just congruence with what I had believed in the past instead of some level of personal integrity. Like that, for whatever reason, that felt like, nope, probably you're giving me too much credit in the moment.
Okay, well, thanks for clarifying that. Yeah. I appreciate that. Okay, so you get married 2 years later. One of the things that you brought up at the event is you said that you have made a bunch of movies, you do all these things, and you were telling how you manage your time with your family and that you have learned to balance things. Now, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I think balance is kind of like a buzzword that doesn't serve me. And it's probably just because of my definition of balance is different than yours. So I would love you to teach me the balance of your life where you are able to fulfill the things you want to do in a healthy way and have a happy family. Because your career is not normal. It's not like you're 9 to 5, like you're leaving for months at a time for movies. You're like, how are you keeping your family happy? And how are you happy during all this?
I think the first part of it starts with just the mindset shift from work-life balance to life-work balance.
Okay, break that down.
And really thinking about, what do I want my life to look like? What kind of lifestyle do I want to live? And I knew that the 9 to 5 for me didn't give me the kind of freedom I wanted to be a professional creative person. So I started in music, and then I got into writing screenplays. They never got produced or anything, but that's what transitioned me into film and becoming a producer. And like the goal or the dream life of a producer is being able to do any project you want anytime, because you have either the money or connections to money to be able to greenlight any project you want whenever you want. I'm not there yet, but I'm working toward that. And I knew that, pursuing a 9 to 5 wouldn't lead to that destination, that kind of lifestyle. So the first shift is going, okay, it's about lifestyle, not about work balance. It's not work first, then life. It's life first, then work. And building the kind of work life that you want that supports the kind of lifestyle you want. And so it took real conscious effort over years to say, oh, it's not quite there yet. What if I did this? And it's always trade-offs. It's, what if I sacrificed a little bit of money in order to pursue this dream for 6 months? What if I gave up this really solid gig producing Relative Race for BYU TV that was paying me 6 figures a year to go and be an indie film producer? And the first movie that I was a producer on, I did 3 jobs on that movie and made like 16 grand and worked myself to death, like 90-hour weeks for 8 weeks away from family. But to answer your question, it really comes down to the conversation with the family. Like, they know I'm a creative person. They know I don't have a regular 9 to 5 job like some of their friends' dads do. And so they're like, well, what are you doing at home? Like, why can't we go play? Well, I'm working. I'm writing today, or I'm on calls all day, or I'm doing a podcast or whatever it might be. That's part of my job. So part of it's just the context. They know what kind of work I do. But then it's also about the conversation of, hey, in order for me to have this kind of life, there are trade-offs. Sometimes I'm going to have to work really hard, but then I promise I'm going to make up that balance by being 100% in dad mode.
How do you get April on board with all of this?
I think that framing...
Let me tell you something. Yeah. There's no way my wife's cool with me leaving for 2 months.
Yeah.
Like there's no way.
Yeah. So first step is changing the framing from how did I get her to be a certain way to she is that way.
Cool.
And so that was from the get-go, that she's a creative person. She's a freelancer. She's been that way our whole adult life. And so there's always been this understanding of there will be ups and downs. There will be ebbs and flows. But if we both believe and continue to work at it, it will pay off.
So a guy who wants an unconventional job and has a spouse that isn't cool with it, what do you tell him?
Don't go in trying to convince her or trying to get her to buy into it. It really has to be that there is more. It always goes back to this idea of pleasure and pain, which we know is a true eternal principle. Like there's opposition in all things. People naturally will not continue to do things that are painful. So for me, a 9 to 5 is painful. It's too limiting. It doesn't give me the freedom I want. So I can't pursue that path. But for April and for me, the pursuit of the unknown, the pursuit of what's possible when it comes to a new business, a new opportunity, a new film, a new partnership, a new project, that's always more pleasurable than it is painful, just because of how we're wired. So you have to reframe, not your wife or your spouse or your partner, but they have to be okay with figuring out in their own mind, how do I make this a pleasurable experience rather than a painful one? Because as soon as if they're 90% focused on my husband's gone for 2 months, I have no help around the house, I'm left alone, yada, 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 down the rabbit hole, that's going to be a painful experience that you'll never have an opportunity to do again. So for April and I, let's take that movie as an example. I went and filmed a movie in Cape Town, South Africa, the other side of the world. And I was gone for 2 months. I left for a week and then I went again for 7 weeks for production. She was able to come and visit the last week. So that was part of what made it a thumbs up. But we had the conversation of this is an opportunity. Talk, not in these words, but where's the pain? Where's the pleasure? What's the upside? What's the downside?
So it sounds like you're communicating. This is like the theme I'm getting, because sure, you can negotiate. I want this type of job if this is going to be the outcome, but you're actually like talking a ton.
Yeah.
So
it's not a
we
negotiation.
Can't pass over that.
I don't think anything has been a negotiation. It's always been a conversation with a partner. And even though she doesn't have any like equity or ownership in my business, we're business partners on everything. And so we listed out. I remember sitting in bed after Garrett had called me and said, hey, we're going to shoot this movie. We need to go scout, do like they call it a recce out in South Africa, but it's basically go look at the locations, meet some of the key creatives out there and see if it's a viable place to shoot this movie. Turns out, perfect place to film our movie, The Carpenter. So I came back from that and I told April, I was like, look, it's perfect. He wants me to produce this movie. I want to produce this movie, but like, let's talk about all the realities here. Like, she was not, this was, so she had started a part-time sales job. So she had some income coming in that would like kind of keep her busy during the day. The hardest part was boys were going to be starting school while I was gone. So my oldest started 7th grade, middle school. While I was gone, that was hard to be gone for. So we talked through all of the hard things over those 6-7 weeks. Who's going to help with the kids while she comes out? Can we afford her coming out? All of the things. We talked through everything. And at the end, it's like, okay, is there more pleasure or pain associated with this? Again, not in those words, but how are you feeling about this? She's like, this is exactly what you want to do. So I have an amazing wife who says, this is your dream. This is what you've been working towards. You're producing this movie. You're not a line producer. You're not a unit production manager. You're not a lowercase p producer. You are the producer of this movie. So internationally.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Go do it.
It's really cool. So I'm hearing that you guys support each other instead of like, and my wife and I have a really cool marriage and we are both creatives, which is awful sometimes because we're both like, I want to do this, you want to do that. And there's been different times where I'm like, I want to do this. And she's like, no. Or, we're like, well, I let you do this, so you should let me do this. And that's totally the wrong way to do it. And that's not the majority of the times. That's just like, I can see that when we get into that mode, like there's no synergy. And you and April are practicing synergy. You're weighing out together, like as a unified team. Yeah. Is this going to be better or worse? And so, okay, well, that's awesome. So your kids though, how do you make time for your kids?
Yeah. Oh, so great. So I have these kind of modes, and that's the language I've used with my kids of like, I'm in movie mode, I'm in work mode. So if I'm at home and doing work, even if it's like, it looks like I'm surfing the internet because I'm doing research or I'm trying to find leads or I'm writing something or whatever. From the outside looking in, you peek into, my office, Dad's on the internet. It's like, that's not work. But I can look to them and say, hey, I'm in work mode. I'm going to be done at 4 today. And they go, great. And they close the door and they go either check in with April, mom, or they just take care of themselves because now they're old enough to do that. But this has been years in the works of establishing work mode means I can't break away right now. So I will as soon as I can. I'm on a call, I'm in the middle of a project and I don't want to break away from it because it'll break my flow and then I'll be upset. So like I have work mode, which is generally 9 to 3 every day, the hours that they're at school. So I try really hard to be done by 3:15. So I'm in dad mode once they get home.
Have you ever broken their trust with I have.
Yes. So perfect example. Right now I'm making up for that. So my middle son, Arlo, last year went and learned how to snowboard with his 4th grade class up at Sundance. And he came home and he said, I love snowboarding. I want to be a snowboarder. I want to do this. Can we go? And for the entire 2022-2023 season, he said, can we go snowboarding? And I said, yes, I promise. Shouldn't have said those promise words, but I said, yes, absolutely. We're going to go because I like snowboarding and I wanted to go. Okay. Where this is going.
That was the best snow of the year or best snow in like decades. It was the best snow in
decades. And I did not take him once. So this year I'm making up for it for breaking that trust and saying I bought him and I season passes. So that alone was a signal of like the entire season we can go. It's not a one-time thing. It's the entire season. The second thing I said is I am going to turn off work mode at 12:15 every Friday because you get home at 12:15 and then we're in dad mode. And every Friday, Arlo and I, and now my youngest son, Liam, who also wants to snowboard, we go to Sundance for 2, 3, 4 hours every Friday. And I turn on dad mode at 12:15. And it's a sacrifice. It's a trade-off because I could do 3 more hours of work. And I know what I'm capable of with 3 solid focused hours of work. Like I can do a lot in 3 hours, but I choose to do that because there was an imbalance last year between work and dad mode. So this year I'm fixing that and rebalancing. And so I think a lot of it, just to throw this last idea in there, is like, what time period are you measuring? Because if it's today, right now, it's like, well, dad's on the internet and I want to be with him. So that's an imbalance. So, okay. But in fairness, let's stretch it out a day or a week or a month or a year. How much time did I spend in dad mode versus work mode? And so when I got home from the movie that we just did back in September, October of last year, we did one here locally in Utah. I basically took like 4 weeks off. I was doing a little bit of work while they were at school, but we went on 3 different trips. We went to Disneyland, we went to the Redwoods, we went all over Utah. Like we did a lot of dad mode stuff where I wasn't working in the morning and then dad in the afternoon. I was 100% dad mode. So it's about, again, life-work balance and making sure that when you do shift 100% one way, you got to make sure that you're coming back at some point and it's not too late to fill up those other buckets or to shift into those other modes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wise words, Daren Smith.
Thank you. It's taken me 40 years to get to that point.
Is that how old you are?
I turned 40 in November.
I'm 41.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was older than you.
40s are going to be the best. I'm so looking
Carl
forward to
Jung
this
says
decade.
like life starts when you're 40. Daren, you're doing so much. You just did your international movie. You're back and then you're writing a book. Is the book done?
The book is done as of about 2 weeks ago as we record this.
That's a big deal.
Maybe a week ago. I wrote the final chapter.
It's called Blockbuster, right?
It's called Blockbuster.
What does that mean?
I'm so pleased because I'm a film producer.
Yeah.
So the first book I wrote was called Craftsman Creative. I released that April of 2022.
Okay.
And that was just really me cementing planting a flag and saying, I'm here, I'm in the creator economy. I want to help people with their creative work and do it full time.
Cool.
So that book's about how 5-figure creators can build 6-figure businesses. Whoops. And it's about that mindset shift of, if you want a 6-figure business, you need to be a business owner, not just an artist or a creator. But this one, it felt like I needed to expand on the idea and really lean into the fact that I am a film producer. And that's like creator on steroids, right? Like you're not just creating your own work of art. You're not just writing a book in your bedroom by yourself. There's 100 people that are being compensated monetarily, and there's thousands or
it's like running a company for a while.
It literally is.
Yeah.
You take $1 million, you hire 100 people, you create the product in 2 or 3 months, and then you get it ready for market in another 2 or 3 months, and then it has to be viable in a marketplace. That's crazy.
So you wrote about this. This is about the process, like a how-to, or what is it?
Yeah, it's really about how independent creators can create massively profitable businesses and projects.
Oh, cool.
So it's really leaning in, it's doubling down on this and using my experience as a film producer as kind of the way in to say, look, yeah, movies are crazy. This is what we do. They're small businesses that we spin up and spin down in 6 months, and they need to make their money back and then some. That's a big ask, because the movies I produce are about $1 million budgets. That's a lot of money. Like that's 100,000 people going to see the movie in theaters.
Yeah.
Ideally 200,000, because the theaters take 50%.
Yeah.
Anyway, the book outlines a framework that I've kind of put together. And as I've looked over the successes I've had in my life with projects, with businesses, it starts with mindset. And then it goes to this outcome focused approach to creative work that comes from Cal Newport's book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. He talks about the difference between like a passion mindset and a craftsman mindset. So that's where I got the name for my business, Craftsman Creative, was that book.
Cool.
And so talk about mindset, talk about outcomes, talk about visibility, which is marketing. Like my Achilles heel is marketing, because
most creatives
I'm an operator.
Yeah.
I'm a producer by trade. So I'm logistics. I'm all of those things, finances, spreadsheets, all of those things are my wheelhouse. I don't do marketing.
Yeah.
But that's what successful businesses do, is they are really good at getting visibility or awareness for their business. And then it's about implementing a couple of systems and then expanding your impact. And if you were paying attention, that's MOVIE.
Oh my gosh, I was not.
Yeah, the movie framework. So it's really just me playing around and having a ton of fun writing stuff.
That's awesome. So it's super niche though. So this is like for.
It's not.
Is it more?
It really leans towards people that want to be filmmakers, that are running video production companies.
Oh, that's what I mean though. It's in the filmmaking industry.
It's in those industries,
awesome.
But the principles 100% apply to, you want to be a full-time creative individual. Cool. Running your own business, this is a framework that works for you. Because that's what I've done, 5 times over the last 10 years, is start and run my own businesses with maybe a business partner, but 4 out of the 5 times have been my own business, solo business.
Dude, so that's awesome. Congrats.
It's a ton of fun. It comes out probably in a few months as this gets released, probably spring of 2024.
Okay, cool.
But
we'll link to it.
The fun thing about these books, the last one and this one, I write them in public. So you may have heard of Build in Public. There's like a movement in the entrepreneur and startup world called Build in Public, which basically means as you're building your product, talk about it online so that people know that you're doing it. Okay. So if you're recording an album, show the demo, put the demo up on Instagram and let people hear the ideas and the direction you're going and the production and stuff. You're not losing money. You're actually gaining followers and fans and people who could potentially join you on the journey and help promote you. It's your street team. It's everything. So I took that and said, well, I'm going to write a book in public. So what I've been doing as I write the 30 or so chapters, I publish them once a week, just the rough draft, unedited versions, so that, I'm growing my audience. I'm growing awareness for the book before it comes out. And, the first time I did it, I went from an audience of 0 for the book to an audience of over 1,000 people who were interested in buying it, reading it, having it at their event. I got speaking gigs from it. I got a podcast from it. I got all these opportunities because I did it that way instead of traditionally publishing with a publisher. I own 100% of the IP and everything, but I'm living what I'm preaching as far as the visibility goes and writing it. So you can actually go, I'll put links in the show notes or whatever to the thing. You can read it for free on my website. The first draft.
What a cool idea.
It's super fun.
Amazing. When I look back at in my 30s, I obviously did a lot of stuff, but it was kind of like meandering. I don't know. I think I was spiritually meandering, career meandering, but you got to be broken. That's the beauty of things is like God works with a broken, you have to be broken. You can break yourself and be humble, or he'll break you.
Yep.
And then you get back on.
One of those is better.
Yeah. One of those is a lot better. Which one?
Yeah. Leave that to you to figure out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I like what you've shared. It's good stuff. What would you say to someone who is in their hard mode right now, in the hopeless mode?
Yeah. Oh man. As hard as it is to hear, your lifestyle, the results you're getting are perfectly optimized for the system you've built. Let's put it that way. That's like the consultant version.
Say that again in a normal, in a way that I can understand. And I can understand.
It means that you need to take responsibility for the results and the outcomes and the experience of your life.
Okay. Why?
Because there's no one else that's responsible for those things. So if you're angry all the time, it's not your spouse's fault. It's not the economy's fault. It's not your boss's fault. It's because you're angry. You're choosing to feel angry. We do a side, like, blanket caveat that, like, I'm not talking about clinical depression. I'm not talking about anything that's extreme, right? Mm-hmm. But for a lot of us and for most of our experiences, we do it to ourselves. We run the system that makes us feel frustrated, or that we're not enough, or that we're angry, or. You think about the moments where you're really frustrated with your kids. It's because you have an expectation that they aren't meeting, that they don't even know about.
It's not fair, but yes.
It's not fair to them. Yeah. But that's 90% of the time what's happening. You have a high expectation that you didn't communicate, and you're holding them to that standard, and you instantly, the moment it happens, there's no patience, there's no leeway, there's no
guilty.
It's just, oh, you went there and you did the thing that causes you to feel embarrassed or angry or frustrated or impatient or whatever it is. We do it all to ourselves. I know it's a really big idea, but if someone was struggling and stuck in it, I would say you need to take responsibility for what's going on here and do the work that it takes in order to get out of it. So there's this great quote from Derek Sivers. You know Derek Sivers?
He's CD Baby.
CD Baby. Yeah. And now he's an author and speaker and just amazing guy. Like, I've emailed Derek about, because he lives in New Zealand. And like I was telling you before, we thought about moving to New Zealand. So I literally emailed Derek Sivers, because he gives his email out on the internet. And I said, Derek, longtime fan. I've emailed you a few times. You might remember me. We're thinking about coming out there. What do you think? And he gave me like a 500-word response of all the things I need to do and blah, blah. He's an amazing guy. Back on track. Derek Sivers, in his book, Your Music and People, which is a book about marketing, talks about calling the destination and asking for directions. So good. Like, that thought is so powerful.
Is that equivalent to starting with the end in mind? Kind of, or no?
I think equivalent, but it also identifies the people that have already succeeded at the thing you're trying to succeed at.
Oh, so it's like really pragmatic, like actually call the
destination, ask for directions. So one or two examples. 2019 was a hard year for me because I was doing the thing where I was frustrated. I felt inadequate. I felt insignificant in my marriage, in my life, in my work. I felt I was really down. And luckily, I had taken my own advice and said, I'm responsible for this. It's not my wife's fault. It's not the economy's fault. It's not anything's fault. I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? And I couldn't figure it out. So I called the destination and asked for directions. Tony Robbins is a guy who helps people find happiness and joy and fulfillment in their life. And I knew a couple of friends who had benefited from going to events. So I went to Date with Destiny in 2019. It's like a week. It's 6 days, 16 hours a day.
Cool.
Intense. And did the work to turn my life around. And my wife will tell you, because she's the one who's closest to me and she knows, how I left and how I came back. And she can tell you it's two different people. So I chose to do the work in a very intense way where
it's like a boot camp.
It's literally it's so hard, but it's so fulfilling and so rewarding. And the effects are lasting today for 5 years later. Like,
so cool.
It's crazy. But that's what I mean. Like, you find the people who have already figured it out, who are teaching it, who you can go learn from. I spent 6 days with Tony Robbins and people that he's amassed to help solve that problem of you're not fulfilled, find fulfillment. Here's how to create it. And so I said, great, that's what I want to do. I want to fix it now. I don't want a 6-month plan. I don't want therapy. Not that I'm against therapy. I don't want this to take 3-4 years. I want it now. So I had to spend more.
So sometimes it's expensive.
Sometimes expensive. Yeah. I had to fly out there. It cost a couple $1,000s to go. But
was it in Florida? Where is it?
It was in Florida. Yeah. Palm Beach, Florida.
It's always in the same spot, right?
Yeah.
That big. I watched I'm Not Your Guru on Netflix. Yeah. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It truly is life-changing. So let that be the plug for Date with Destiny for Tony Robbins. But like literally this thing that I'm wearing on my wrist comes from that event. What
is that?
So I had one up until last year and it frayed and broke, but they're representative. There's different, I'm not into the complete woo-woo end of the spectrum on these things, but there was a moment at the event and Tony Robbins talks about these 6 human needs that we all share. I'm not going to go into it, but I can if you want to later. Email me and we'll talk about Tony Robbins. I love this stuff. But 6 human needs are things like certainty, variety, significance, connection, growth, and contribution. And I was like, okay, well, my life right now is about certainty and significance. I felt uncertain in my work and insignificant in my marriage. And Tony says, if those are your top 2 needs that are driving you, you are in for a world of hurt. And I was like, great, I'm going to change that then. And that's what you do on like 2 days of the event is you spend time shifting to what you want your life to be about. And I went out in the lobby and he has these bracelets and hats and merch and all that stuff. And I was like, bracelet would be cool. Like that's a cool looking thing. And the one I bought represented contribution and growth. And I didn't realize that, but throughout that day, I had done all the work to figure out what do I want my life to be about? Variety, connection. What do I want it to be about? And I decided contribution and growth. That's who I am. That's getting back to like 16-year-old me and what my life was about before I was wrecked by a divorce and had gone through like struggling in business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like contribution and growth. That's what my life's going to be about for the next foreseeable future. And it was so interesting because last year I wore it every day and it frayed. So like 3 years in, it had frayed to the point where there was one thread left holding it on. I'm like, I don't want this to fall apart on a subway or like at the park or anything like that. So I put it aside on my shelf and let it go for about 6 months. Cause I was like, do I get a new one of those? Do I get a different one? So I went on. April needed to find a stocking stuffer for me for Christmas. So I went on, found this one and it represents transformation, which is the new me for next year, for this year, 2024. Yeah. It's a year of transforming into the type of person I want to be next. And so it's a daily reminder and a daily practice of putting it on and going, that's what my life's about right now. I'm focused on this. And last bit of Tony Robbins isms is where focus goes, energy flows. So if I'm focusing every day, starting the day and ending the day with this little ritual of taking this on and putting it on, it reminds me, and that's where my focus is, and that's where my energy is going to go. And I can transform into the kind of business owner I want to be, the new kind of dad that I want to be, the new kind of husband that I want to be. And it's not because I've been bad, it's because I want more. And I think there's a difference between being hungry because you don't have enough and being hungry because you want more.
Yeah.
It's the same word. We use hunger for both of those feelings, but one is very much in a place of need and the other is a place of abundance.
Well, I think when you feel good about yourself, the wanting more falls by the wayside, and then you're interested in growth and contribution, which is really cool. Which I would describe you as that way. You love to contribute. You're always growing and shifting and doing new things, and I would say courageous. Like you dare to jump into
Some would call that stupid, but yes, I'll take courageous.
Yeah, take courageous. Dude, that's awesome, man. I didn't know you went to the Tony Robbins thing. We'll talk more about that because that's a fascinating.
Yeah. I plan on going back at some point. I haven't yet. I've done his other shorter events, and done some coaching with them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I want to take April. I want to take the boys when they turn 16. Like cool. I'm all in on the Date with Destiny transformation.
Dude, that is cool. It's like the self-help Date with Destiny, kind of like, it's kind of, people treat it in a funny way.
Yeah.
But to see the results of the people that go through that, it's like, how can you laugh at that? How could you like not take that seriously? I mean, there is something there, because there are definitely people that take advantage of vulnerable people that are 100%. Hurt. But man, Tony Robbins has done so much good.
Let me share a quick anecdote from that event, because Tony Robbins is a man of God. He talks about God. He talks about spiritual things at these events. The most spiritual experience I've had in my adult life in the last 5 years was at Date with Destiny. So there was a moment where there's a gentleman named Master Co, and he does these meditations. He's like live meditations, a room of 5,000 people, and he's like helping them all individually meditate.
Wow.
I truly had an out of body experience where my physical body slumped over, and I felt like my spirit was looking down on my spiritual body.
Or your physical body.
My physical body. Thank you. And it was scary as heck. Like, it was frightening to feel like I was simultaneously experiencing this weird, never before felt, I can't physically move. There's no life in my body, and simultaneously being my spirit and looking down. And what happened in the moment was like my spirit was keeping me down. It was pushing my hand on my back. I was slumped over on my knees. My hands had fallen, slumped down, and I literally couldn't physically move. And then I had this experience of, I'm keeping you here until you learn this lesson. The lesson was, I am not the body. I'm not my body. Yeah. I am a spirit. I am a son of God inhabiting this body for a time.
Wow.
Heavy.
Yeah.
What ended up happening was Master Co ends the meditation. My physical body, I can feel everyone around me sitting up, drying tears. I'm slumped over like an idiot and not moving.
What?
And I feel people around me. I feel the eyes on me. And that's, again, the spirit going, you need this right now. You need to really cement this moment, and you need to believe it 100% thoroughly through every fiber of your being, if I can use that term.
What does the body mean to you, though? Like, you are not your body. Does that mean like possessions, how I'm perceived? Like, what is the body? Is that your ego?
That's a really good question. The ego is a big part of, like, it really made everything that I was coming into that event with, all that baggage, just dissipate. Okay. It was like, oh, that's nothing. Why was I giving that so much of my focus and time and attention, to the point where I was ruining my relationships with my beloved family because I couldn't let go of those things? And in that moment, it was like, oh, it's fairy dust. There's nothing there.
Dude, that's beautiful. What a wild experience.
Crazy wild experience. I've never shared that before.
Thank you for sharing that.
Nuts, and taught me that very important lesson that we are more than just our bodies. We're more than our experience here. And we have so much more power than we think we do to change the experiences in our lives.
We create our reality. You are absolutely 100%. Right. Yeah, that's a big thing. So going back to what you tell someone, take responsibility. I would add, you create your reality. If you're someone who you decide that you can't get up and live a healthy lifestyle, then you can't do that. If you've decided that we create our reality, that weight of responsibility is extremely crushing and very liberating, depending how you look at it. Yeah. Because it's sometimes very easy to blame others to justify where you're sitting and stewing.
When's the last time anyone's life changed because they effectively blamed someone else?
It's a good question. Okay, so I want to end with this. What is the most important thing you want to teach your boys about being a man?
Ooh, about being a man. I'm glad you added that caveat. I don't have a good answer to that right off the top of my head. What do I want to teach my boys about being a man?
I mean, if you were to die today, what would you want them to say at the funeral? My dad taught me.
Yeah. My belief is that life is about joy, progress, and love, charity. So it's some mix of those things, and helping them understand what we were just talking about, that you can control the level of joy you have in your life. The more you create, the more you feel. The more you strive to progress, become like God, the more you do. And the more love you give, the more you experience. I love the difference between charity and love. I don't remember who I heard this from, but at some point, like someone defined charity as something you can't have for yourself because it is a deep concern for the well-being of others. That's what charity is. So you can't have charity for yourself. You can love yourself, but you can't charity yourself. It always is outward. And that, like, the fact that God is love, that he's charity, and like charity and love and hope and faith and all these things that we learn about and we study and we try to embody, you can only give charity. You can't have it for yourself. So that's a big idea. But I think that embodies what I would want them to kind of remember that I tried to live and be an example of. Like, we have a lot of joy in our family. We have a lot of fun. We do fun things. We travel. We have experiences. There's a lot of joy there. I'm now like kind of mentally going through this. Like if I truly act the thing that I'm saying I think is important. As far as progress, I would say, yeah, that's a big part of my life. I'm constantly not unhappy or dissatisfied with where I am, but there's something about the pursuit of what's next and more, in that sense of not more because I'm greedy, but more because, gosh, if there's abundance here, why, and it feels so good now, what would more feel like? And it's just this constant, like, childlike, well, I want more of that. Can I have another? What if I started producing movies instead of just doing sound for them? What if I went and did a film internationally instead of just here in Utah? What if? So that idea of progress, not just in work, but what would it look like to be a better husband? How could I progress in that role of my life? How can I be a better dad? How can I be a better spiritual leader? How can I be a better friend? All of those things are progress for me. And then with charity, it's really about service. It's about making sure that you're not just selfish, you're taking care of people. There's charity. And so I think my boys, because I'm serving in a leadership position in church right now that requires a lot of my time. And now I have another mode that we've added to the mix. And we talked about that. We had a night where we sat down and we talked about it. When I accepted this responsibility, we sat down with the boys and I said, we're adding a new role. We're adding a new mode. I said, I have work mode. I have dad mode. I have, I call it April time instead of like husband mode, but we have April time every day. I make sure that we either eat lunch together or I just go in her office because we both work from home and I sit down and I'm like, hey, it's April time. You got 15 minutes? You got 30 minutes? Like we chat, we talk, we eat food together, we whatever, but it's April time to make sure that I never miss it. And then I was adding church mode where it's like, hey, I'm in this mode now. Well, why do you have to be gone 13 hours on Sunday this week? Well, I'm in that mode, but they know it's not benefiting me. At least that's not the driving reason for it. It's because charity and love and service in Christ's name, on behalf of God, that's important. And I'm living that as best as I can because it's important for them to see it. The only way they'll ever believe that it's true and maybe try to follow it in the future is if I'm living it. I can't just say, you got to serve people every day and then never serve people. That your kids will not work.
Do what. Yeah. It's that's the truest thing. In fact, Mason and I were talking about that, right, Mason, about how your kids will not do what you say. They will do what you do.
Yeah.
It's annoying, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
Yeah. It's funny when they're like 3 and they repeat a bad word that you slipped out or something, but
when they're 13,
responsibility hits when they're
13.
10, 11, 13. It's like, oh, how important is a phone? How much time am I spending on a phone? How much time do I have a phone in front of my face between me and them?
Yeah.
That hits you hard.
It does.
Because now they go, life's about phones.
Yeah.
No, it's not. Well, that's what I've shown them. That's what we've shown them. It's like, okay, so how are we going to undo that? How are we going to fix that?
It's a whole nother episode.
My
man, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking time. I know you have a lot of things going on, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity.